the Jacques Attalys, these people would be to throw down the card of either pandemic part 2, war and fake flag events. Maybe something happens in America and the media says like, Zelensky was vindicated, Russia attacks, America at war, Russia attacks. You can see the Fox News headlines right now, right? So those are all possibilities. I don't know what other options they have, maybe economic, tanking the economy or something like that. But yeah, I think that we've already seen 2 attempts on Trump from the left and from the CIA establishment. So I won't be surprised if there's another one.
All right. So I want to get your thoughts on the Pope. And the headline here is just from a couple of hours ago. Pope Francis is back on a ventilator after suffering 2 respiratory failures as the pontiff's health roller coaster continues. What's your thoughts on this news story?
Well, I think that probably Francis, being one of the global elite goblins, understood that his time was limited. And so he actually participated in the last few years of stacking the deck of the cardinals with very revolutionary, very socialist-minded cardinals. So I don't expect, as probably many hopeful Catholics do, I'm not a Catholic, but many hopeful Roman Catholics expect that maybe they'll get a traditional pope that's the opposite of Francis, but that's not going to happen. Francis has already stacked the deck of the electors. You're going to get probably somebody who's a sort of a fake, faux conservative, so to speak, who might operate as a foil to Francis to keep duping the people that think that this institution isn't completely corrupt. Or you might get the next level of revolution that goes light years beyond Francis. I mean, I view, John Paul II, Benedict as liberals already. And so if Francis was a revolutionary compared to those guys, the next guy coming in might even be light years beyond Francis. If you watch the movie Conclave, I don't know if you saw that, but did you see it?
No.
Okay, well, there's a surprise at the end where a non-binary person ends up being the Pope. So maybe that's where we're going next.
So earlier on, did you refer to Francis as a globalist gremlin? Was that who you said was globalist gremlin?
Oh yeah, he's absolutely his mentor was one of Klaus's best buddies. So yeah, I think Francis is pretty. I mean, almost everything he's pushed, from open borders to the stabbies to, UN. We need more world. He was like totally pro Davos. I mean, he's terrible.
So what is the role of the Pope in the globalist agenda presently?
Well, if you go back to the Cold War, the papacy, I'm not a huge fan of the papacy even before the Cold War, but there's a lot of mainline academic texts written by CIA, State Department, establishment people. And Kissinger played a big role in this to basically align the papacy with the CIA. And that happened in the Cold War. It happened essentially at Vatican II through certain really famous Jesuits like John Courtney Murray. And you have basically CIA heads consistently meeting with the papacy all throughout the Cold War. In fact, many of the CIA writers will actually attribute part of the victory in the Cold War to John Paul II. Mainly him being shot by Ali Agca, who was believed to be part of the Soviets. I don't actually think he was. I think he was actually working with the CIA and some of the Turkish groups. CIA actually set up Turkish intelligence. And so the organized crime, the Turkish intelligence that helped, they were called the Wolves, Ali Agca get in the position to shoot John Paul II. All that operation did was aid the West and the CIA. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm pro-Soviet. It's just that's the reality of, I think, what happened in that PR victory through the Soviets shooting John Paul II. The whole world said, "Oh, look how evil the USSR is," and they did the same thing with JFK being shot by the patsy Oswald. Right? They immediately tried to tie Oswald to the Soviets, and so that's all Cold War psyops in my view. And yeah, that's why the Vatican now is essentially aligned with the entities that the CIA set up, like the World Economic Forum. Remember, it was Kissinger that put Klaus in charge of World Economic Forum and Davos, part of his Harvard research project. Kissinger set all that up.
All right, folks, got almost 1,000 watching live. I'm here with Jay Dyer. All of his links are in the description box. I've just put his YouTube channel link into the live chat. And you've written several books as well, haven't you, Jay? And get your questions in the live chat, please.
I just finished my third Hollywood book, by the way. So Esoteric Hollywood 3 will be coming out in a couple months.
Oh, congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Yeah, so please get your questions in, and I will keep them starred and keep them coming. What was the role of the Vatican in the rat line that helped the Nazis?
I think that the Vatican was trying to play various sides at that time. And so they were involved in aiding many of the fascists in World War II. They probably had their eye on certain stashes of gold that the fascists and the neo-Nazis, or excuse me, the Nazis had access to. I think that even today, we don't even know exactly where the Nazi gold went. This is a kind of a famous historical mystery. But the real source of that is, if you look into Operation Gladio and the Galen Org, many of those people were also connected to the Vatican prelates. And they even, the name of the guy is escaping me, but the Vatican even canonized one of the butchers in Croatia. I always forget this guy's name, but he's like a saint in the Roman Catholic Church. And he's like a butcher of Orthodox Christians. And so I think that the Vatican was compromised even before Vatican II, when you had William Colby. He was stationed in Italy during, I think, before World War, at the time of World War II. He was under Pius XII. He was established as the CIA's desk in Rome. I think James Jesus Angleton was as well. And they both made these alliances with the papacy and the Vatican Bank to funnel money into the Vatican Bank to help make sure that the Italian Communist Party didn't win those elections. And that's the beginning of Operation Gladio, where the Vatican aligns itself with the CIA, organized crime, the mafia. And that also connects to some of the rat lines working with fascists. But they didn't just work with fascists, they would work with anybody.
Yeah, so we had the CIA, the Vatican helping the Nazis escape to South America and to America. People like Klaus Barbie, who ended up just as an enforcement arm of death squads in South America.
Paperclip, probably everybody's heard of Paperclip, probably. That's all connected to the same stuff.
Yeah, and then you've got a lot of these former German military got brought into the CIA, didn't they? And
yeah,
used.
Essentially, if you look at today's German intelligence, the BND, it is the Galen, or that's Reinhard Galen, right, from the Nazis. He was a really effective intelligence operator who set up all the fascist intelligence networks throughout Europe. When the Germans lost World War II, the CIA went and just took over all of those networks and made them CIA networks. And they set up the German intelligence network, the BND, out of Galen Org. And by the way, some of those networks are the same in Ukraine. And that's why you've had neo-ins in Ukraine since World War II that the CIA still uses.
And the justification was, rather than working for us, than the commies.
They also gave Galen himself immunity if he would hand over all of his intelligence networks.
So you're talking about Nazi gold. Let's go to Fort Knox next. What do you think is going to happen when they do this inventory check?
Have you ever seen the James Bond movie Goldfinger?
I loved it, yeah, when I was a kid.
I think it's going to be like empty, right? I think there was some kind of Goldfinger plot that happened at some point. I mean, I don't really know if it's empty. I'm just halfway. I'm tongue in cheek, halfway joking. I don't know. I mean, somebody had a good idea that they should convert Fort Knox into being a fort where there's Bitcoin miners, and then the whole thing should just be Bitcoin mining, and that'd be the only way that the U.S. will ever get out of paying, its supposed national debt, which is fraudulent debt anyway. But I have no idea whether somebody was even saying that they thought, well, if they go in there and there's nothing there, they're not going to tell us because that would freak everybody out. You have economic collapse, so who knows, and who knows what to believe.
Yeah, didn't Germany request their gold back at one point, and they only got 40%, and then they suddenly went quiet about it, like someone had been paid off.
I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, gold seems to go missing quite often. I mean, there's like giant stashes of gold that somehow, we hear about in history, like it just goes missing and nobody knows where it is. Um, anyway, I mean, I don't know a lot or have a lot to say on that other than that, there's, who knows, man. I wish I had more info.
All right, keep the questions coming in, folks. And Jay is an expert on esoteric Hollywood, secret society activity, eyes wide shut, that kind of stuff. And you can check his 3 books out now, Esoteric Hollywood, parts 1 to 3. So Bailey is asking whether you will elaborate on the secretum. Secretum?
I unfortunately don't know what that is. I wish I did.
I don't know what that is either. So Rosebud wants to know, is there anyone in this world you trust?
Yeah, I mean, I think over time you can get a good gut sense about people that's pretty accurate. You can have reservations even if you don't necessarily trust somebody. I mean, I think a lot of people in power, government, presidents, these kinds of people, billionaires, I look at what they do rather than what they say. And so that's a much better guide for people at that level. I look at people's track records. If I'm interacting with people in media or show business or entertainment, comedy, whatever, most people that I've interacted with, they're pretty straight up. I mean, usually there's a bad apple, but that's maybe 1 in 20 people is a bad apple. So I don't think that we have to adopt some kind of like overly suspicious, overly paranoid attitude. But most of the time at really high levels, people are, even if they're not personally compromised, they have to compromise to be in the situations of power that they're in.
Exactly. Do you think there would be economic collapse if the real Jeffrey list of clients came out?
I don't know if there'd be an economic collapse unless a lot of the clients were particularly from the banking or Federal Reserve structures, maybe in that sense. There might be a massive collapse in confidence in the establishment, but that's already kind of there. So I don't see that as a very good excuse for withholding this information because, I mean, that debacle last week just kind of makes people more suspicious.
Yeah, Sophia. I mean, this client list now, it's all like the old regime embedded in it, really, isn't it? The ones that were the deepest, like Clinton. So if it did come out, then I think these people are already, these are the globalists that are falling, as the title on the thumbnail says on this video. And it could be weaponized. Perhaps Trump is just firing shots across the bow about releasing things to have these deep staters back off him because he knows his life's under constant threat.
Exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why they, tease this stuff, in the public, in the media.
It's ammo.
Yeah. Well,
So, Laureen Renee, what do you think of Gene Hackman's death? We've been covering this. It's just got weirder and weirder.
yeah, I mean, the initial assessment was that it was a suspicious death. I think the dog also being dead is very odd. There was immediate disinfo that was put out yesterday that he was going to talk about Epstein's list. That's not true. I have no knowledge if he knew anything about that. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But I think it's always suspicious when high-level A-list Hollywood people suddenly turn up dead. Not just them, but also people around them, including their pets. So that could suggest a hit. It could suggest, something going on. I also know that when you see some of these deaths that where people are, how can I say this, autoerotic type things, those are also sometimes hits. And the reason that they might be hits, I'm not saying that people can't be into weird sex stuff. It's just rather that those are great covers for when you do a hit. You can cover the event with it making it look like, right, they killed themselves. And I didn't see Randy Quaid, but I know that Randy Quaid has been saying that there are hit squads for the last 10, 15 years. And I think when Rose McGowan came out with her information, people found that to be more credible because she was talking about certain private agencies that were stalking and harassing her. Black Cube, I think is what she said. So yeah, I think this is absolutely plausible. I think a lot of popular people, I don't know in the case of Hackman, obviously, but there are people who are taken care of or taken out. And I mean, just think about an A-list, let's say entertainer, musician, their record catalog, if they're taken out or if they die in some way, I mean, the catalog shoots up. So there's a motivation right there, right? And there was a comment a minute ago about Hollywood Babylon. Just wanted to mention that. So my books are like Hollywood Babylon, except that when Kenneth Anger wrote his, he was writing about old Hollywood and the scandals that go on, like Fatty Arbuckle being involved in, sleeping with some woman, and I think he slept on top of her and crushed her. So, I mean, that was just a crazy story. But my books are not about that per se. They're about the meanings in the films and the different secret societies that people are involved in Hollywood, how that comes out in actual, the films can be a revelatory thing. So I talk a lot about, the CIA's involvement in Hollywood. A lot of A-list actors have been spies and worked for the CIA, as well as other intelligence agencies, British intelligence, Israeli intelligence, all of that's involved. So the books are not like Kenneth Anger's books is just basically about, gossip and Hollywood deaths. But mine is more about film symbolism and secret societies.
So Airy Dispatches is asking, how satanic is Hollywood?
I think that Satanism and satanic cults are popular in Hollywood. I think that many actors, producers, and people in those circles have been involved in different cults, secret societies. Many of them are devotees of Aleister Crowley. Many of them have been just in the Church of Satan, which is a more of a atheistic kind of organization. And then you've got all kinds of weird Kabbalistic, cults and sects, people like Madonna, Demi Moore, I think. And then you've got Scientology, which, although it's not directly, quote, satanic, I would say is a mind control type of cult. L. Ron Hubbard left Crowley's cult to create Scientology. So, and that's a huge section of Hollywood. So a lot, I would say a lot, but not everybody.
Next question. Diddy lawsuit today with him directly involved with Tupac. Any comment on this?
I mean, I've been following this history and the background of their, squabbles, going back to Death Row Records, going back to, the death of Biggie Smalls and all of that. There's a guy who wrote a book from my publisher, Potash, Drugs as a Weapon Against Us. And a lot of that book deals with the East Coast, West Coast rap war, as well as going back into the history of music. His book is more focused on the music industry. And there's a lot of, FBI, federal informant, gang involvement and all that stuff too. So I'm not going to be surprised if Diddy is involved in the Tupac event. In fact, I think that's probably likely.
Nisi wants to know whether there's a relationship between Zelensky and Soros, or Soros's role in Ukraine.
Yeah, so I think he began the soft power color revolution operations even in the late 80s in the Ukraine, and then into the 90s. And the reason that it was that early is that they wanted, after the Cold War, to make sure that those Eastern European countries, the Eastern Bloc, could be transitioned into the Western financial model. And one of the global elite books that we just recently covered was Jacques Attali, who's the Kissinger of France. He's the sort of the mentor to various French presidents. Attali was in charge of the European banking structure, integrating the post-Cold War Eastern Bloc countries into the EU banking structure. And they wanted to make sure that they could immediately get those countries into IMF debt, you see. And so that was a very key role there. So that's why they had to start so early in making sure that Ukraine, when they started having elections, didn't get people elected who were, favorable to Putin or to Russia. So that began in the 80s and 90s. Even Reagan, Reagan was involved in privatizing the intelligence, the stuff that the CIA used to do, and putting it under humanitarian aid cover. So a lot of that stuff with USAID being fronts, being shells, a lot of the operations that we're talking about today, including Ukraine, were run out, and Serbia as well. By the way, Serbia was when they took down Milosevic, it was the exact same operation. They used the cutout, which was called the OSCE, Organization for Security Cooperation in Europe, and the OSCE was basically just packed with British intelligence, CIA, U.S. naval intelligence, all these operatives essentially for NATO to ensure that they could take down. In Serbia in 2000, it was the people power color revolution. In Ukraine, it was the orange revolution. So it's all the same structure and model.
Right, I've got a heavy question for you here, Jay. Let's see. From Hushed Tones. How has the Enlightenment trapped both ends of the political spectrum into a crap paradigm? Progressives want a revolution. Dispensational evangelical want the end times. Is this a coincidence?
I think that the best way to understand this in our day is the model of a circle of acceptable political or social discourse. So what the social engineers and the power structure does is they make sure that you only ask questions or discuss topics within a circle. Anything outside of that circle is considered not even a valid question. There's actual studies on this. I did a podcast with a guy that used to consult at I think the Defense Department, and he did a whole lecture on this about how the media control works. So any question, like if you were to say question the Enlightenment, that would be a question outside of the circle. It's not even a allowable, relevant question. So it's a very tightly controlled discourse and dialectic that's allowed in the media, and I think dispensational evangelical end time stuff is just another one of these control positions that makes you useless, ineffective, and an idiot, basically. All of that stuff, by the way, was set up by foreign PACs and their funding, shall we say, in America to get people to default to worshiping certain places in the Middle East, if you understand what I'm saying.
Of course. Why is Trump against hardworking federal workers who are not a part of the deep state? That's from Tashel.
I don't know if maybe she's not in America, or maybe she's, not understanding how the deep state bureaucracy works. It's nothing to do with picking out people who are hardworking. It's rather that there has been a security state establishment that's a breakaway establishment that kind of works as a shadow government within the U.S. government. So this is what really runs the country, and they're directly sort of subservient to people above them that are committed to the globalist projects. So that model is actually the model that the British Empire itself set up for itself, with this inner circle that would run things. Cecil Rhodes, et cetera, Rothschild Milner Circle. And then they had a society of helpers, which was about 6,000 or so academics, people in media, people in business, who were true believers in the faux democracy that the people in this inner structure promoted. And so the same model was set up in America through Pratt House and through CFR, all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the people that you're talking about, they actually are not, they may be good intention and they may be hard workers, but they're working for institutions that actually undermine the U.S. and national sovereignty.
Yeah, a lot of good people are in organizations that have been co-opted by the vested interests. So Uber Fuber, do you think Gulf War I was about oil, or do you think they really believed he had weapons of mass destruction?
Funny you said this, because I just read in so the two official historians of British intelligence history, Andrews and Green, they wrote a giant book, which, by the way, came out about 10 years after my book. Their book is about spies in entertainment and spies in Hollywood.